Hello and welcome everybody to the Line Movers Network. We are in college football week number 7, and this is the Line Movers podcast number 6 for college football this week. As you will notice, we again have Ian Robbins, but this week we do not have Tyler. Instead, we have a super special guest. Trey Edge is going to be joining the Line Movers this week to give us his insight on this week's college football games and his thoughts on just where college football is and is going. Good evening, guys. Welcome.
Good evening, fellas. Thanks for having me. Big shoes to fill.
We'd have some fun. We'd have some fun this week.
Let me just give a little background here on Trey. Trey is going to take it away from here, but Trey has some great insight because Trey's coming from the background of playing college football at a big-time program. Trey is a Tar Heel. He played at North Carolina. Trey, take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate, first of all, you calling them a big-time program. That is certainly a debatable point, especially this year. But yeah, some time ago, defensive back at UNC played is a relative term, but certainly was part of those teams. And the beauty of where I am now with that program is that when I was there, it was Mac Brown's first stint. So he was my head coach, and he is the current head coach. So you get a little bit of a glimpse into how he runs things now versus how he ran things then. Some of it's predictable, some of it's changed over time, but it's been a fun road, and looking forward to talking some college football with you guys tonight.
That's great. Thank you, Trey, for being here and joining us tonight. Really appreciate it and excited to hear what you have to say. Just a little housekeeping for the Line Movers Network. Please follow us on Twitter all the time at _LM Network, on our YouTube channel, the Line Movers Network YouTube channel. And you can find all of our podcasts, all of the Line Movers podcasts, wherever you go to find your podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. We're all there. So come listen to all the podcasts, all the different sports. We're here to help and give you a little insight. Again, my two college football experts tonight, Ian Robbins, as always, and our special guest, Trey Edge. Before we get into the games for the weekend, guys, let's just talk about the landscape of college football. First, there's some teams getting knocked off that are losing, getting knocked out of the national title picture. Even a school like North Carolina, who thought they had a shot this year coming into it, big hopes. As teams lose and some kids start pulling out of playing and maybe going the professional route next year, is this good for college football, Trey?
It's an interesting question. As somebody who's tied so closely to the college game, your instinct is to say no, it's not good for it. In my own personal experience, if you look at what North Carolina did last year in going to the Orange Bowl and playing against Texas A&M, and it had been a long time since Carolina had played in a game that big, and you wind up with two running backs, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, opting out. Giambi Brown opting out. All those guys were NFL picks and are getting significant playing time. It upsets you a little bit, but that's just part of being a fan. I get the other side of it. My concern overall is how it does affect the game as a whole. And I think you're right. I think as we move down the stretch, the second half of this season, and we get toward bowl games and opt-outs, the bigger issue is these teams that so much was expected from, what do they do the rest of the way? Do you see them lay down when they get down in the first or second quarter? My Tar Heels losing to Florida State last week, a Florida State team that was struggling. You start to wonder, how do these guys react? How does a guy like Sam Howell, who was a Heisman candidate, react down the stretch when he knows he has a pro career in front of him? It doesn't thrill me. It's just part of the world we're in now in college football.
Ian?
Yeah, no, it's a huge point, especially when you get through the second half of the year. Me being a Florida alum, seeing a lot of opt-outs in those bowl games last year as well. You get both sides of it. Players are going to play, players give, and, they always ultimately want to be taken care of, and that's their right. And it does affect the handicap, especially in bowl season. But, during bowl season, that's a whole different beast. It seems like it's creeping in closer now into the regular season, and UNC is a great example there. We talked last week, Texas A&M, who had all these expectations falter, and then they come out and they upset Alabama, and one of the biggest upsets in a long, long time. And, that just basically saved their season and what they were able to accomplish. So it's interesting. And we see the preseason Heisman favorite. I don't think I've ever seen a preseason Heisman favorite, and Spencer Rattler, preseason number 1 overall pick in the draft, get benched in a Texas-Oklahoma game for a freshman, and then the freshman comes back and wins that. It's the landscape in college football, the way that the freshmen are ready to play, the way that things can change in the transfer portal. It's such a dynamic shift, and it really changes the way you handicap the second half of the season, looking at who the coaches are. If there's new coaches with newer players, like one of the examples that we'll talk about, Tennessee, new coach, new quarterback, and they seem to be hitting their stride a little bit. You might look for little combos like that, where teams maybe with coaches on the way out, or new coaches just playing younger guys who maybe aren't as well equipped yet to win at a higher level. UCF, Gus Malzahn, they seem to be a little bit underperforming with some of his guys not being able to mix it. He just might go with some younger guys and may not be able to compete. So you want to look at a little bit more deeper, and we'll talk a little bit more deeper as we talk about handicaps as we get into the heart of conference play into the towards the end of the season.
Throw one more thing around here for a second. Everyone thinks Alabama's on a crash collision path to see Georgia in the SEC championship. If that takes place and Alabama loses, or it's a close game, is Alabama still in the playoff hunt?
In the hunt, for sure. Now, do they take a 2-loss SEC team? I mean, we've seen it happen before. It's difficult, and truthfully, a lot depends on what goes on around them. Does Ohio State run the table? If they run the table and win the Big Ten, play somebody like Iowa and beat Iowa, they're going to be in it. We always sit here and talk about Oklahoma. Everybody has this thing about, we don't want to see Oklahoma in it again, and they blow up. I don't think Oklahoma is going to run the table, quite frankly. I think they're going to trip up somewhere. They almost did it last week against Texas. But it so much depends on the landscape around Alabama. And what's going to happen. If they get in with 2 losses, the fury across the country that screams SEC bias and ESPN bias and all this other stuff will happen. It's interesting. I mean, Clemson having 2 losses could still win the ACC. That's not an option. They're not going to get in the college football playoff. But Bama, because they're Bama and because of who they play each and every week, and would have to play Georgia if Georgia's still undefeated number 1, they have a shot to get in even with 2 losses.
I agree. Ian?
Yeah, I think the way that college football is laid out right now, you see this power shift in the Big Ten, and it's kind of dramatic. Iowa is sitting there undefeated now with that big win. And now they kind of have a cruise control into the Big Ten championship game, where on the other side, you got Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, 2 undefeated teams, 2 teams in the top, and they are all really kind of in control of their own destiny, because Penn State can still beat everybody. Ohio State can still beat everybody. Michigan and Michigan State haven't lost to anybody yet, and they still have to play each other. So they're kind of knock each other out, and all 4 of those teams have a chance, and then Iowa's going to be sitting there waiting. So they're going to kind of run through that, and one of those teams is going to get in. And, if you have an undefeated Michigan versus an undefeated Iowa, then the debate is, okay, does the loser get a chance to get in? And then what about Cincinnati sitting there? How does a 2-loss Alabama, who just lost to Georgia, get in over Cincinnati? I don't think that could happen again for a second year. The Big 12, Oklahoma State, they're both sitting there. It's going to be a fascinating second half of the season. I think if Alabama gets to that title game, they need to beat Georgia, and then both of those teams will get in. I think if they get to that spot, Cincinnati and everybody else are going to be big time Georgia fans to knock out Alabama. I think that's their playing game, and Georgia really has nothing to lose. They're in no matter what.
And Cincinnati needs Notre Dame to run the table.
Yes, they do. That's true too.
and Indiana to get hot.
Yeah.
All right. Great points by both of you. Moving on to basically, let's break down some of the biggest games of the week. I know people are going to say it's not one of the biggest games of the week, but Miami is going into Chapel Hill, and we have Trey on the show, so I want to hear his breakdown. The Hurricanes are going in, like I said, to Chapel Hill to play your Tar Heels. North Carolina, 7-point favorite, total of about 67.5. How do you see this one going, Trey?
It's a matchup of two disappointing teams, and that's the blunt way to put it. Carolina ranked number 10 preseason. Miami was in the top 20 preseason. These were the two teams that were picked to contend for the Coastal Division Championship, and they've both fallen way short. It's puzzling. It's honestly puzzling from a Carolina standpoint, which is, kind of where I'm coming from. If you look at the team that returned, again, from the Orange Bowl team that battled Texas A&M without three of their best players, it's puzzling. It's hard to figure out. They returned 10 of 11 starters on defense from that team. They returned their entire offensive line. You returned a preseason Heisman candidate and Sam Howell. All those pieces led to a lot of optimism, not just by the fans, but by a lot of pundits across the country. They did lose a lot of production in Michael Carter and Javonte Williams and De'Ami Brown, but it has been a season where they started off the season losing to Virginia Tech on the road. Tough place to play, I'll grant you that, but it wasn't a good performance by the Tar Heels. Then the shocker was they go to Atlanta and just get boat raced by Georgia Tech. That was when the flags went up. And you said, okay, something's wrong here. Georgia Tech put up 45 points. Then you lose to Florida State at home last weekend, 35-25. The common theme here is a couple things. The offensive line is struggling big time. They are really having trouble blocking anybody. Sam Howell is getting hit. I mean, there's honestly every game he plays right now, I'm worried he's going to get hurt and not make it through the rest of the year. He's the second leading rusher on the team. If you watch Sam Howell run, he can run, but he's not a classic running quarterback. But the thing that's killed him is on defense, defending running quarterbacks. Virginia Tech wasn't that per se, but if you jump to Georgia Tech's quarterback wore them out on the RPO. Last weekend, Florida State, their quarterback wore Carolina out. They must have run the same play 8 times in a row. And Carolina still hasn't tackled their quarterback. How does that apply to this week's game against Miami? The big news is the quarterback that transferred from Houston to Miami, Derek King, is out for the season with a shoulder injury. He is the exact kind of quarterback that Carolina has struggled with. So if he was in this game, you look at this game completely differently because you knew what the game plan would be. Now that he's out, Tyler Van Dyke, he's a second-year freshman, is going to be the quarterback for Miami. He's a classic drop-back passer. He's not a real running threat. So what Carolina is going to be able to do is focus on stopping the running game, but not the quarterback. The issue has been the quarterback. Van Dyke's thrown for 473, but he'll never be mistaken for a runner. Miami's off a bye week. The last game they played was a tough loss against Virginia. Game-winning field goal that bounced off the upright. They've had 2 weeks to stew on that. So how do they come out? We've seen this. Two teams at a turning point of their season. It's going to go one of two ways here. If Miami loses this game, you've got to question under Manny Diaz what they do the rest of the season. If Carolina loses this game, your next one's at Notre Dame. You still got a strong Pitt team, an undefeated Wake Forest team. It could go downhill in a hurry. So this is a must-win. Carolina's pass rush has been weak this year. Van Dyke is a pure pocket passer, so he'll have opportunities. On the flip side, what I would worry about if you're looking at betting on Miami is this. 2 things. The quarterback not being able to move. That's going to be a problem because Carolina will play this differently. And they give up 250 yards a game passing. Sam Howell is going to have a big night. He and Josh Downs will connect. They will score points. It's going to come down to what Carolina's defense can do. And I think the loss of King, the lack of option from the quarterback running the football is a huge story in this game. Styles sometimes make matchups. And in this situation, I think they rally the troops. It's funny. The line dipped down to 6.5 earlier this week. I loved it at 6.5. The 7 makes you a little worried. I still think Carolina gets it done. If I'm looking at the handicap, I like it 35-27. That puts it where you need it to be. The over-under, it's right there. That I saw it dip down to 63 at one point. That's tough. Carolina's put up 59 points in 2 games, 2 individual games. But I think the Hills get it done. I think this is a make or break game for them. This can go downhill in a hurry. And I think they've got enough talent on that team that somebody's going to have to step up and say, look, it's do or die. Should have been do or die 2 weeks ago. So I'm counting on it to happen this week. It's at home. I think the loss of De'Aaron King is huge, and I think they cover the spread.
That's great, Trey. What a breakdown. Ian, Canes, Tar Heels in Chapel Hill.
Not much for me to add there. That was a great breakdown, Trey.
Incredible.
I took some notes out of that, and I was thinking, all right, UNC has trouble with pass rushers. Miami tends to have really good pass rushers. Might look at that angle. Okay, yep. UNC is not able to rush the passer. Maybe new quarterback Miami has a little bit easier time getting the ball downfield. Maybe look for points there. Maybe look for the over. From a Miami perspective, I think Manny Diaz is counting his days. Question is, do guys play for him, or are guys with Derek King out, or the other guys kind of out too? And I worry about that. I think it's a live betting opportunity that if UNC gets up 2 touchdowns early, I don't think they're going to stop. I think if it's a slow scoring game early, you might see a closer game, so you might want to take some points in play. Great breakdown, though. I got nothing more to add there.
Moving on. In the Big 12 this week, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are undefeated. Correct. I said that. They are undefeated. Didn't see this one coming. They're going into Austin this week. Where is Texas's heads? They had that game sealed up. They were rocking. They were rolling. Half that stadium was going crazy. And then Texas loses their minds and the game in the last 5 minutes. Oklahoma State is opened up. They were getting about 6. It stayed right around there, getting about half. The total, 65.5 on the opener, down a few ticks to about 61 currently. Oklahoma State at Texas. Ian, what do you got?
Yeah, this is a crazy spot. This is a big test for Coach Sark over here. First year, major program, head coach again. How does he get these guys, this young team, back on track? And what a great game that was. Texas just jumped out, first play, touchdown. Turnover, touchdown. Before you can blink, it's 21-0, and they just didn't stop first half. Bijan Robinson was running all over the place. Quarterback Caleb Williams looked great, but then they got up and they kind of get complacent. And you see this all the time in college football. You start to see that momentum shift. See Oklahoma start to get a little bit of confidence come up, and how does that affect a college football team? And there's an old saying that's just happened that we hear it all the time. Don't let one loss turn into 2. And I worry that might happen. One loss turned into 2. I think you lose that game the way that you did in overtime. And I think you go into this week, or not in overtime, sorry. Lost that game at the end. They actually lost the spread too. And you see this game, you see Oklahoma State coming to town. Oklahoma State hungry, one of their better teams that they've had, playing better. They just beat Baylor in that big game. They're playing with confidence. Coach Gundy certainly has experience. This will be a statement win for that program. Really get them over the hump. This is would almost put them into the Big 12 title game with the wins that they have. And I think the way that their trajectory is, and I think the way that Texas is coming off that game, I do think that Oklahoma State has the talent to play with them, kind of shut them down. The key is going to be Bijan Robinson. If you're just going to feed Bijan Robinson, then Texas is going to be in the game. But if Oklahoma State is able to kind of establish their will in the first quarter, maybe get a couple stops, take the crowd out of it early, then I I think they'll be able to really hang on and maybe win this game outright. And that's where I am leaning there, Oklahoma State, especially with the points.
Right.
Yeah, we're on the same side as far as the handicap's concerned, and it's an interesting year because when you look at Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State, the first thing that pops in my mind is not defense.
Right.
But when you look at this year's team, they've been good on defense. They defeated Baylor in their last game 24-14. They held Baylor to 280 yards. I mean, that's a strong performance. And if you look at most of their scores, it's been college football, you call low scoring. What's low scoring anymore? 45 points? I don't even know anymore. But they've been stingy, and they only allow 18 points a game. The interesting matchup here for me is exactly that defense against Texas and Bijan Robinson, who's just such an incredible running back. Oklahoma State, I said they gave up 18 points. They also only averaged giving up 91 rushing yards a game. So when you look at that, it's not hard to figure out where this game's going to be won. Can Texas impose their will or not? Their offensive line's not great. He is just such an incredible individual talent at running back that they overcome some of that. They've got some injury issues this week. Texas does. Second leading receiver, Jordan Whittington's out. Doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it's one less weapon they have to work with. They've got two guys out on defense, one of their edge rushers, and they don't get a great pass rush. So it's an interesting handicap because Texas can put up points. We just saw them play 55-48 in the loss against Oklahoma. But it doesn't lend itself to that kind of matchup. The thing that puzzles me or starts getting my attention are these teams that have gone through half of the season undefeated and it's going to come to an end. We'll talk about Kentucky tonight, Oklahoma State. Do I think Oklahoma State's one of the elite teams in the country sitting there at 6-0? No, I don't. But this is, a big step toward, a showdown with an Oklahoma. So, I lean with Ian here. I don't necessarily think Oklahoma State gets the win, but I think the defense is good enough to keep them within that 5.5 to 6 point spread, and I'd roll with the Cowboys.
Great. 2 on the Cowboys there. Next game, SEC country. Probably not just the SEC game of the weekend, but probably the national game of the weekend. The Kentucky Wildcats are rolling in to Georgia. The Dog D has been absolutely awesome. Kentucky, on the other hand, also, like Trey just said, is undefeated. And there are wins on that schedule. They beat Ian's Gators. They knocked off LSU. They have looked and played pretty solid football so far. Then the spread came out, and it's Georgia's favored by 24 points. 2 teams undefeated. SEC game of the weekend. CBS is coming to town, and Kentucky's getting 24. Trey, what do we see here?
Yeah, that spread's crazy, but probably appropriate given what we've seen the first half of this season. That is hard to believe. An SEC game with 2 undefeated teams and a spread of 23.5, 24 points. Just some of these numbers, though, when you break this down, it's easy to say Georgia's the best defense in the country. But when you look at these numbers, it's really unbelievable. They've scored 239 points, given up 33. In SEC games, they've scored 133 points. They've given up 10 the last 3 games. I mean, they're averaging giving up 5 points a game. So when you look at a matchup like this, they've got Stetson Bennett in at quarterback for still injured JT Daniels. He's been good. He's been solid. He's not flashy, but Georgia doesn't play flashy football. They rely on the defense. Take your pick. They got 4 different running backs who can run it. They're talented enough on offense. You flip the script and look at what Kentucky can do because Georgia's going to score some points. They may not roll up 50 points, but if they get 28 or even 30, can you score enough to be competitive? That's the question, and that's the problem. Kentucky runs the ball very well. They average 214 yards a game, but they haven't played Georgia. And one of these things stuck out for me. Kentucky's 6-0. 5 of those 6 games have been at home. You're going on the road to the new number 1 team in the country, Athens, Georgia. Georgia's got an 11-game winning streak against Kentucky. All these things point to Georgia. I don't have any problem saying I think Georgia's going to win this football game. It's that spread that gets you. And like you said, we talked earlier, that 44.5, 45 lends you to what, 34-10, somewhere in there. And that's exactly where I kind of looked at it. I had written down 35-10 Georgia. So I just don't think Kentucky can score enough to keep it within 3 touchdowns. And then it becomes a matter of, do they get that 4th one to win it? I actually am going to roll with Georgia at home. I think the bubble bursts for Kentucky this weekend and Georgia covers.
Wow. Ian.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I was sitting here when a lot of people were talking Arkansas going to Georgia, kind of a similar spot, undefeated rolling into Georgia. A lot of people were liking Arkansas, and I flipped it and I said I like Georgia, and I like Georgia to roll them, and that's kind of what happened. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective. I'm going to try to make some points on the other side because I cannot disagree with anything that Trey just said about the handicap because it's all spot on. It's all true. It's all right there. I'm going to try to take a couple looks for Kentucky here. Last week, we talked about Kentucky, LSU. I said this is the statement that can they consolidate that Florida upset win with a win over LSU. And Tyler's like, is this what we expect from Kentucky? And they showed, they came out and they dominated LSU. LSU might not be LSU, but that's a statement win for Kentucky. They came back, they backed up their win, and now they're on the brink of the top 10. So we can expect Kentucky. They do have NFL talent. They have explosive players. They haven't really had explosive plays so much this year, but they have explosive players on both sides of the ball. So I look at Kentucky in that way. Coach Mike Stoops is very, very good. They brought a new offense coordinator from the NFL who worked with Sean McVay with the Rams. They're starting. They have NFL concepts on that side. The defense is one of the better defenses in the country. They have NFL talent. They have playmakers. Wan'Dale Robinson is a playmaker. He's a legit NFL draft pick playing on that offensive side as a receiver. And if he can get free, if they can find a way to get him the ball, he can make a play that could blow this game up a little bit. They do have a good running game. Chris Rodriguez, Kavasier Smoke, they're good running backs. They're good SEC running backs. They've had a little bit of trouble hanging onto the ball, especially early on in the year, that almost could have cost them some of those wins. But if they can hang onto the ball, limit those turnovers, they can make something happen. Will Levis transferring from Penn State at quarterback, he's made some plays. He's proved me a playmaker, especially some of these bigger games for Kentucky. Can that travel on the road? That's a huge question. So on that, Georgia just got a milestone. They just became number 1 in the country. This is, for Coach Smart, that's a big deal. They passed Alabama in the ranks of, now they're the favorite. Now they're the darling. Now they're the best team. They're the team to beat. They're the hunted. They're not the guys who are looking to pass Alabama. They are number 1. How are they going to feel? How are they going to be able to respond? Are they going to be, we're number 1? They're our college kids. Or are they going to say, we're number 1? Let's go show people why we're number 1. And you're going to see that very early. First quarter, you're going to get a sense. They come out, they smack them in the mouth just like they did Arkansas. It's going to be game over. Can Kentucky come out, take the ball, maybe give the ball to Robinson on the edge, throw the ball downfield, make a play, get an early turnover, get something that might switch momentum. Kentucky's going to have a prayer. And if they have a chance, they have the talent and the coaches that can keep them in this game. But that's going to be decided in the first quarter. My initial lean is going to be to the under. I do think these two defenses are legit. I think turnovers might put that a little bit in question, but I do think these are 2 of the top 5 defenses maybe in the country. I think the run games are going to kind of control it. I do look for some big plays on either side that are going to determine the game early on. If Georgia gets out rolling early, I think they just might put them away early and sit on it like they did Arkansas. If Kentucky could stick around, it's going to be because it's low scoring and they're going to have a chance. So that would be my lean, but a couple points just from the Kentucky side point of view.
Great. Rolling along on the Line Movers Network college football podcast with my college football experts, Ian Robbins and Trey Edge. This week, Let's go into everyone's favorite segment, Rapid Fire, where our experts are going to give you a couple of quick notes, and then they'll send you their picks. Let's go out west. Friday night in the Pac-12, the Cal Bears are going into Oregon. The Ducks are about a 14, opened at about 14, now at about a 13.5-point favorite. The total is hung in there at about 55.5 all week. I've heard all different opinions on this Oregon team. Some say they 9 in the country, well-deserved. And I've heard other teams say they've played nobody. They barely beat Arizona. They barely got by Stony Brook. They got a few maybe questionable calls in the Stanford game, but they lost. Who is this Oregon team? Cal at Oregon tomorrow night. Oregon 2-touchdown favorite. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, I think Friday night at home, Oregon's got to respond. Got to respond with a statement. I think they got more talent, better team. Come out. I think anything under 14, I'll lean Oregon there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Cal gives up 281 yards passing per game. They have a weak pass rush. I think Anthony Brown, the quarterback for Oregon, will go all day. I'm like Ian. I love the 13.5 line. 14, it gets a little sketchy, but I love the 13.5. And actually, a little tidbit on the over. Oregon's gone over 55 points in all 5 games this season. That over-under last we saw was sitting right at 55.5. So something to think about there as well.
Great. Let's go back to the SEC. As Ian and Trey discussed earlier in the show, we talked about teams that lose, that are probably out of the national title picture. And now some guys are starting to lean out. Some guys are trying to come back in. We have Ian's Florida Gators are traveling to Death Valley to play the LSU Tigers. It won't be a night game. It'll be a 12 Eastern afternoon game. Florida Florida is about a 10.5-point favorite in Death Valley. The total on the game, 59.5. There hasn't been much movement in that. Gators at Tigers. Trey, how do you see it?
That line seems about right. I'll make it quick because I know Ian's a Gator and he'll have a lot to say about it. What sticks out to me, man, it can turn quick. Coach O on the hot seat at LSU. What stands out about this matchup, Florida only giving up 16 points a game and the number 15 defense in the country. LSU's best wide receiver, Keyshawn Butte's out for the season now. I don't see LSU being able to score enough points here. I love the under 59.
Yeah, that was a great response for Florida last week.
Gator guy. Yeah.
Great response for Florida last week coming off the loss. I know it was Vanderbilt, but they did what they had to do, 42-0. Given 10, one thing I'll say, if it's a close game late, Dan Mullen will look to put the points on to cover the spread. I don't think we'll get to that point. I think Florida's going to remember last year. Remember the game that they lost that cost them their season. I think Dan Mullen knows it. I think the players know it. These schools do not like each other. Night game takes a lot of juice out of the game from the home crowd. So from the home perspective for LSU, I think Florida's going to find something and win by 2 scores or more.
Rolling along, let's go back to the SEC. The team of the week, the team everyone's talking about, the game everyone's talking about. Texas A&M goes to Columbia, Missouri to take on the Missouri Tigers. Can Texas A&M come back down to earth, playing in Missouri this week? Upset out of nowhere. They were playing bad football, to be honest, early season. Then they play their best game out of nowhere against the Crimson Tide in Alabama. That place was absolutely on fire, College Station, last week. That was an incredible scene. There were some awesome scenes all across the country. College Station was definitely one of them. So this week, A&M is heading into Missouri. A&M's been about a 10-point favorite. Really haven't seen much movement. A total of 60.5. Ian, Texas A&M at Missouri.
I'm totally buying the letdown spot here. Give me the points from Missouri. A&M just made their season. Would it surprise me if they just came out and regained their focus and ran through Missouri? No, but I'm not expecting to see that. I think They have it. They beat Alabama. They reached it. I think they come down. Missouri's a tough place to play. Weather might be a factor. Give me Missouri in the points.
Trey.
I think it's the first time Ian and I are going against each other. Makes it a good show, right? You can't agree on everything. Right. The only thing I agree with Ian in the sense the danger of a letdown is there. You know, the only thing that might prevent a letdown, Missouri's dead last against the run in the entire FBS. They give up 288 yards a game, 37 points a game, and they're 0-6 versus the spread. So I think there's a chance of a letdown there. But I think the thing that nullifies a letdown is if you can line up and run the football down somebody's throats. So I'll go with A&M.
Cool. Let's stay in the SEC. We just talked about Alabama coming off a loss. I'm sure Coach Saban will have his boys full attention this week, and I'm sure practice wasn't much fun. But Starkville is not the easiest place to play. The cowbells will be a-ringing. Alabama's heading into Starkville to play Mississippi State. Alabama opened at about a 15-point favorite. People are taking Alabama. It's up about 2 ticks to 17. The total opened at 59, down 2 points to about 57. Ian, Alabama at Mississippi State. What do we see?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't want to be facing Alabama for a loss, Saban after a loss, especially Mike Leach against Saban. Alabama by 3 touchdowns or more.
Trey.
Yeah, we're back on the same train. It's the same thing. You don't want to be the team that plays Alabama after a loss. I don't care where this game's played, whether it's in Starkville or where it's played in Kalamazoo. Doesn't matter. Bama's going to absolutely make a statement this weekend and cover.
Staying in the SEC, but we'll go to a night game, 7:30 Eastern. Ole Miss Rebels are rolling into Knoxville to take on the Volunteers of Tennessee. Ole Miss started about 4-point favorite down a tick. Ole Miss is sitting at about a field goal favorite. The total in this game is way, way up there. Opened at 85.5. They've driven it down a little to about 81. Ole Miss at Tennessee. Trey.
Yeah, these are the 2 fastest paced teams in the country, number 1 and 2 in the country in plays per minute. Ole Miss 46 points, Tennessee 41 points average. It's only Ole Miss's second road game of this season, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do, especially coming off a 52-51 emotional last-second victory over Arkansas. Might be shocked, lean Tennessee here, and I'll let Ian address the points.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the record and say I lean Tennessee as well. I think Coach Heupel's got them with as soon as he put Malik Hooker in a quarterback, they're finding their stride. I lean Tennessee there. They're going to score. 2 fastest paced teams. Heupel's going to want to put up points. Kiffin's going to want to put up points. They both put up points. Over. I'm actually taking the over. Like that over there.
Isn't that crazy? Over 81.
Over 81.
It's insane, man.
Let's roll out west. Finish our rapid fire selections with a Pac-12 after dark matchup. Arizona State Sun Devils are heading to Utah to take on the Utes. The Sun Devils opened this week at Circa as a 2-point favorite. We have a flip of favorites here, seeing Utah at currently about a 1.5 point favorite. So no one's getting a field goal or giving a field goal yet. So Ray basically picking the winner. The total is 50. Arizona State at Utah. Ian.
I like Utah. I agree with the point movement. Utah is good at home. They're well coached. I like Utah to win this game.
Trey.
Agree. Common opponents. Both of them lost to BYU. Arizona State lost 27-17. Utah lost 26-17. I think it's a toss-up. You look at that line movement. I'm like Ian. I like the line movement, and I like them at home. Last 16 games, Utah's 15-1. In an even matchup, I'll take the home team.
Awesome. That'll wrap up the rapid fire section tonight's picks. For the Line Movers Network, Ian Robbins, I'm David Dorman. Again, I want to thank our special guest, Trey Edge, for coming on. Trey, please come on any week you want. Your insight and info was spectacular. We loved having you. Great stuff.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Follow us, the Line Movers Network, on Twitter at @the_LM Network. Follow us on our YouTube channel at the Line Movers Network YouTube channel. And follow all of our different sports podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Amazon, Spotify, we're there. Again, for my college football experts, Ian Robbins, Trey Edge, I'm David Dorman. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate it, guys. Good luck.